Chuck Todd has some thoughts about Bernie Sanders, but also about his supporters. Here he is.
If there's a Stop Bernie movement, that is going to be to hell will pay with the Bernie people because they are so committed.
Hey, I want to bring up something that Jonathan last put in the Bulwark today, and it was about how in Ruth, we've all been on the receiving end of the Bernie online brigade. And here's what he says. He says, no other candidate has anything like this sort of digital brown shirt brigade. I mean, except for Donald Trump. The question no one is asking is this. What if you can't win the presidency without an online mob? What if we now live in a world where having a bullying agro-social media army running around, popping anyone who sticks their head up is either an important ingredient for or a critical marker of success?
Wow.
Okay, that's
I know everybody's freaking out about this, but you saw the MAGA rally that's preparing around here. There are people coming from 3 or 4 states on that. That's real, and you know, this is like Bernie.
Oh, so there's a lot of issues there.
Oh, yeah.
Why don't we start with the digital brown shirts? I think that's probably where it should start.
Yeah, although I want to get to the online mob. So if you missed it, he just called the Jewish candidates' supporters brown shirts. If you don't know, brown shirts are Nazis. So now, I wouldn't go towards anti-Semitism or anything like that. I think Chuck Todd is Jewish. I didn't look it up, but so I only know that because the right wingers are lunatics, and they're like they outed Jewish people in media. Anyway, but Chuck, you ought to be a little careful in comparing a major presidential candidate and maybe the first Jewish president ever. Yes, I said it. And his supporters to brown shirts. That's nuts. And one of his excuses is, well, hey, listen, I'm just quoting someone. I mean, all right, so
come on.
First of all, you're quoting a conservative columnist. Shocking they don't agree with Bernie Sanders and want to call him a Nazi. Second of all, if we're playing that game, can I quote someone calling you a Nazi and go, hey, I'm just quoting. I didn't say it. I'm just quoting people, right? So online mob. How about the mainstream media mob that attacks every progressive every time, Bernie 1,000 times? Your mob doesn't count. On your own network, Chris Matthews the other day, nearly in tears, they're gonna take me to Central Park and execute me. Are you kidding me? Hysterical lunacy. And that mob never counts, okay? But when anyone says, hey, could you stop punching us in the face? They're like, look at the online mob. Look at the online mob. I mean, all we did was 1,000 attack pieces in a row against Bernie Sanders. And here we are having a panel discussion where we all agree that stopping Bernie is really, really, really important to the Republic.
And obvious.
And
you have to do it.
Hey, remember the Stop Buttigieg movement? Oh, right, there isn't one because they love Buttigieg. They love him, they can't get enough of him. Besides which, he's easier to stop. Okay, so, but they never notice the irony of their vicious attacks against Bernie Sanders, which never ever count. And if anyone ever says, hey, could you not do that? Look at these fanatics online.
Yeah, why are you being so mean to me, you Nazis?
Exactly. I literally
don't understand it. I don't understand it, except that I do understand it. On the quoting thing, get the hell out of here. We quote people all the time. We read quotes where we agree with some of it and don't agree with part of it. And if it's something that is horrible, maybe a little bit of a caveat coming out of that graphic saying, well, obviously the reference to brown shirts is 100% right out. But let's talk about social media followings. There was none of that. And by the way, when I read graphics, because I'm a person and I'm fallible, sometimes if I really like the graphic, or if I don't, like if it's Trump, I'll put some flavor into the way I read it. And he did that at the end of his graphic. That was not just an objective reading. It certainly was not a critical reading. That was an enthusiastic reading. It was him as someone who's not supposed to express an opinion, even though he constantly does and did very much there, taking a piece of paper and then being able to read it so that he doesn't get in trouble. He's just quoting someone, even though he loves the discussion. And no one at that panel said, wait, what are you talking about, brown shirts? You're comparing people who are passionate about Medicare for all and student loan debt to a militia that puts the Nazis in power? Nobody. How many was there? Was there $8 million worth of salary at that table? Was there 60 years of experience at that table? Nobody brought up any sort of concerns with what he quoted.
And we've quoted, to John's point, we've quoted 1,000 people we don't agree with, and then we immediately say look at how loathsome this quote is. He didn't say that. In fact, he followed up by saying, a reference to how it reminds them of the MAGA mob outside. So Bernie Sanders, who wants to give everybody in the country health care so that their family members don't die, wants to give people higher wages, wants to serve the average person rather than the elites like Chuck Todd, is somehow the equivalent of Donald Trump, who says maybe there are good people on the side of the folks that chanted the Jews will not replace us. Donald Trump, who says there should be a Muslim ban. Donald Trump, who calls Mexicans rapists and criminals. Donald Trump, who gave tax cuts to the richest people in the country, including Chuck Todd. Okay, so now those two things are apparently equivalent. Well, some people say Hitler is a Nazi and others say Mother Teresa is a Nazi. Well, I guess we'll never know, but I did put them in the same sentence, that's it.
Yeah.
And then, I can't believe these goons that support Mother Teresa. This Mother Teresa mob is out of control. Just because we compared her to Hitler, why are they so mad?
Yeah, and look, so obviously because of what he chose to do last night when he got that and printed it out and had it and he wanted to bring it up, he wanted to have it there. A lot of people have questions for Chuck Todd. Scarily, in the future, Chuck Todd is gonna have questions for some important people because NBC News and MSNBC on Wednesday announced the 5 journalists who will moderate their Democratic primary debate in Las Vegas later this month. They include Lester Holt and also Chuck Todd, the guy who's going to be choosing and then asking questions of the guy he believes leads a mob of Nazis.
Okay, preposterous.
It's insane.
Look, if they said, first of all, hey, somebody one of the hosts of the Young Turks should be one of 5 moderators in a debate, I guarantee you heads would explode. They'd find that to be the funniest thing they ever heard. A progressive moderated debate, no way, that's biased. Well, you have 5 conservative people who are either Democrats or Republicans, I don't know, but none of them are progressive. None of them have ever been progressive. Out of all the debates and all the moderators, not in the Republican Party, but of the debates in the Democratic Party, not one has been progressive. And they're like, well, of course, and that's why questions are framed as the first 18 minutes of the last debate. Hey, everybody raise their hands if they think a democratic socialist will definitely lose. Let's talk about how democratic socialism is the worst and is unelectable and is gonna lose. Nobody ever asked the question, hey, last time a moderate to conservative Democrat actually did lose to Donald Trump. So does anybody wanna raise their hand for why they think Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar have no chance of winning because they're exactly the same mold as a candidate that lost to Trump last time? Never framed that way because progressives are not allowed in at all. And they would find it outrageous if you allowed a progressive to ever have a voice. And then they say, oh, can you believe they're raising their voice online? Well, where the hell else would we raise it?
Yeah.
Where the hell else do we even have a voice?
Occasionally on Cuomo.
Yes, and that's about it.
That's about it. A couple of the shows have had Ann on, that's good. So look, Chuck Todd rightfully being criticized for the brown shirt comments, but here's the issue. I do want this to be sort of a learning moment. They definitely won't learn, but it could be a learning moment for Chuck Todd and the other people that were on that panel about why these Bernie people are so angry all the time. Because you had the calling them an online mob that's the same as Trump, they're Nazis. Those would be high up on the list. But I want to show you a few other things that have appeared on MSNBC just in recent experience, some on that same panel. So let's start there. Let's go to a minute after the brown shirts comment.
This is a part of the campaign that we never had to worry about 4 years ago.
Yeah, and I think the question becomes, what if we get to the convention and Bernie Sanders does not have anywhere near a majority, but he has a plurality. He has 35, 37% of the delegates, and he goes to the convention and says, I won more primaries than anyone else. I have more delegates than anyone else. I dare you to deny me the nomination.
That's exactly what I was talking about. Right. You don't have super delegates anymore. I mean,
on the first ballot.
At least on the first ballot, you don't have the members of Congress who would be the elders. I mean, that was exactly the reform that the Bernie Sanders people demanded.
Oh, guys,
it's amazing.
That's amazing. They're so blinded by their own bias. They're like, what if Bernie Sanders made a logical case for why he has the most delegates? And they're like, well, obviously he should be defeated, so we wouldn't accept that. And I wonder if they'd get angry if we denied him the logical win, they assume. All of them assume at once. Well, obviously, we would deny Bernie Sanders, obviously.
How will they respond when we deny him?
Yeah, even though in their own fact pattern, He won the most amount of delegates. They're like, well, obviously we would rig it so he doesn't win.
And he won the most primaries in their hypothetical.
Yes, that's right.
The vote, he won the vote.
But then these troublesome people, the unwashed masses, would complain about the rigging we just said we would do. Can you believe how meddlesome they are? After Bernie got the most votes, they'd want him to be the candidate. And then Andrea Mitchell comes in and goes, this is why it's so bad that we got rid of the super delegates who were the elites. See, the elites could have stopped Bernie in a situation like that. Now we're worried because of Bernie's reforms, we might accidentally have democracy in the Democratic Party. And none of them notice any of the irony. And they all just say it like, well, of course we would rig it against Bernie, and of course that's the right thing. And I can't believe that they would ever complain about us doing that. Did any producer, after they walked off the set, go, guys, next time you might want to not say the quiet part out loud?
Yeah.
Hey, you know
the part
what?
Where you steal the election.
Right, right. Maybe next time you want to at least pretend to be fair, because otherwise we're going to get some blowback, and it might be a little bit legitimate. What do you mean legitimate? Those are Nazis that are criticizing us when we steal the election.
Yeah, and I don't know for sure. I didn't watch after that point, but I love the idea that they then pivot to talking about Donald Trump talking about stealing elections. But anyway, so there's that. Okay, obviously we got to stop him from getting it in any way possible. Casey Hunt's MSNBC.
Yeah.
Just to make sure. Okay, so Casey Hunt, I saw, said she was talking with an individual, and as the sort of lead into talking to that person, she says, well, if Buttigieg rises, it would leave the party with two candidates who've shown they have no ability to appeal to people of color.
What?
Bernie, as of today nationally, has an 8-point lead in African American voters. His vote in Iowa among Hispanic voters was overwhelming. What are you talking, like, Casey Hunt, I'm sure, considers herself a very serious journalist, and yet it's obviously false. All of the data contradicts it, and yet there will be no correction, there will be no apology, there will be no learning, there will be nothing.
Yeah, so Buttigieg for a while was getting 0% of the black vote in South Carolina as an example. And it's not just because he doesn't have name recognition, although that's an important part, and they should, to be fair to Buttigieg, they should mention that context. But he has a terrible record in South Bend, and almost every black leader in South Bend has come out and said, yeah, he fired the black fire chief, he demoted the black police chief, he nearly wiped out the black police force. Read Michael Harriet at The Root and Jonathan Larson here at TYT to see the story. So there's some real issues there, massive issues, right? Bernie, on the other hand, is not beating Buttigieg by 8 points. He's beating Biden, the second closest competitor, by 8 points among minority voters. Number one in the country.
Number one.
Number one in the country. But Casey Hunt says, well, he has a problem with minority voters like Buttigieg does.
No ability to appeal to people of color. No ability.
And
he's nothing.
You know what that is? It's alternative facts. It just is. So Trump does it from a right-wing perspective, and the mainstream media does it from an establishment perspective. But if you ever tell them that, they get so offended. They say, oh, look at these monsters online, saying that we're not doing good journalism. That might hurt my career 2 to 5%. Actually, don't worry, it'll help your career. If we criticize you, you'll probably get a promotion, okay? Oh, you were wrong on air and the Young Turks pointed it out and they're 100% right. Congratulations, you're now an anchor, okay?
You're moderating a debate.
Yeah, you're immediately moderating a debate. Not only, but they genuinely think like, oh my, that might hurt my career a little bit. They are so rude online. You called Bernie Sanders supporters Nazis. But you're not rude. You pretended that Bernie Sanders has no minority support when he has the most minority support.
Yeah.
But that's not rude. That's not character assassination. But when we say, hey, could you please actually get the facts right? They're so offensive. They're so offensive. I was busy making millions of dollars as a journalist on air, and now I might only make 2.5 million instead of 2.6 million next year.
Yeah.
You guys are so offensive to us.
Yeah, like it bothers me because I'm a Bernie Sanders supporter, but I'm just a white Bernie Sanders supporter. I can't speak for anyone, but I would trying to imagine that if you're not white and you're a Bernie Sanders supporter, Casey Hunt just like threw a tarp over millions of people. He had no appeal. So all of you who will be watching this right now and might be mad at us about it, you don't exist. You're literally not out there. It doesn't matter if you voted for Bernie Sanders, if you donated for Bernie Sanders, you've been following him for years, maybe you're canvassing for him, you're working on his campaign, you're knocking on doors in New Hampshire. You don't exist because he has no ability to appeal to anyone like you.
All right, look, and then when I say you should join us, because without us, all you have is this pulp. Then they turn around and go, oh, are you trying to make money?
Yeah.
What do you think your multi-billion-dollar media corporation does? You guys make money off of maintaining the current corrupt system, and you get all those money in politics ads, you get all the drug company ads, etc. So tyt.com/join. Without independent media, all you have is manufacturing consent, propaganda garbage that you're seeing on cable news. By the way, I'm gonna remind you one more time. That's MSNBC, not Fox News and not CNN. That's what Washington considers the liberal station, the progressive station, the one attacking Bernie Sanders 24/7 and lying about him non-stop. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.